If we take another look at the breakdown section, so this part has also become the lower one. Let's do these again. And 1 that ends just like it started. Then there are 4. Great. This will be our rough arrangement. Let's complete the form, or the structure, of our piece this way. And now we can move on to the main challenge. Let's start mixing the piece. In the part of our lesson up to this point, we have first looked at gain staging and then the concept of arrangement. When you really look at it, what we call music production is a universe in itself, and we are embarking on an interplanetary journey. I said before about the arrangement that the ocean is a very broad concept. Now let's move on to the largest and most mysterious of these planets. There are many different theories whose starting and ending places are not clear. Concept, so we will have arrived at mixing, the part where we do the mix. Here, of course, as I have done so far. I will be explaining the basic concepts and fundamental principles, so that we don't get lost in it. In the upcoming lessons, we will address and examine each of them one by one. It might be appropriate to give an example related to mixing. Just like a sculptor has 2 tools in hand while shaping a stone. One is a hammer and the other is various sizes of nails. When you look at it, one of the elements we use the most while mixing, that is to shape the sound, is 1. One of them is EQ, which stands for equalizer when it comes to compressors. The arrow in the top left corner, if we click here we have a screen where we can access the shortcuts and tool development of the program. As you know, I would like to remind you again that we are working with the light version of the program, which is quite limited. It seems like there's a version that has Ableton instruments and effects. Since I'm trying to progress, I will again try to use only the audio effects available in the light version. First of all, we will start with the kick. The things we will use here, as I mentioned, are based on 2 main elements. One of them, compressor. One of the things we'll be using here is EQ3. And there's also the 3-band version, as well as the other 8-band versions available in Ableton. In recent years, there's been an increasing popularity of a tool with growing intensity. We have a tool, that's the saturator. We'll also be looking into this a bit later. The compressor is also one of the planets that needs to be explained in its own right. What it does fundamentally is limit or increase the dynamic range. What we actually use as the most basic tool is to equalize the lowest and highest points of the sound. As you already know, the equalizer is where we make various adjustments and changes to the frequencies. And as I mentioned, the 2 tools we use most frequently are the compressor and the EQ. As you already know, equalizer is where we make various adjustments and changes on the frequency. And as I mentioned, the two tools we use most frequently are the compressor and the EQ. When mixing, regardless of the tool, the main element of the piece is usually the kick. It is because the driving force of the track, this is the underlying kick that is directly responsible for the heartbeat and rhythm. Since the kick has undoubtedly become the main element in the track, it stands out as the element we hear the most and the loudest in the piece. When we say mix our track, where all our elements come together, from that part, we're starting the mixing process with movement. Then we'll be making some minor adjustments between the other sections. I've selected section C of our track, which is where all our elements come together. And when you press Command L or Ctrl L, you'll see a loop icon appearing right here in the upper right corner. And at the same time, it shows us that this is looped. The cursor has appeared. When we play our track, now if you remember, what we did with gain staging was to leave some headroom here in the master section. And our aim in doing gain tuning was to ensure that all the elements that were competing with each other in terms of volume, that is the total sound, were at a certain level. Just like we were lowering all the sounds in gain staging, now we need to arrange the sounds of the elements we want to hear the most by either raising or lowering their levels in a specific order. What we do with the kick is that since the kick is the driving force of our track, we will try to make it as prominent as possible. Other elements, I will be muting it like this. You know the same thing. By the way, this mixer here, the equivalents of what's on the clip view screen, are also on this side in the mixer arrangement section. So, actually, it's possible to do the same things you're doing here from there as well. Now that we're going to focus on mixing, I want to continue from the mixer screen. When we play the kick by itself, when we play it, normally look at this area here. I'm refreshing it by clicking frequently. It's minus 13 right now. And we're seeing something that goes between minus 16. As you can see on the compressor, it has already given us a visual representation of this waveform, meaning the shape of the sound. It has also provided us with a nice tool that allows us to see the operations we can perform from here. When you click on this little yellow dot, you deactivate it. So, you are taking it out of the circuit. First, let's focus on the volume here. As we said, the maximum peak point we want to reach here will be around minus 6 to minus 7. Since one of the elements we need to hear the most in the track is the kick. And the loop we're using is also like this. Look here. If we want to create a peak point by continuously clicking repeatedly, we have already set it here. We're currently at minus 13 on the level. We're at minus 12. We can see that it doesn't go above this at all. From here we can already see a result like this. The loop we're using is already complex by itself. It's also limited. Minus 12. So let's raise this a bit to around minus 9. Let's make it stand out more in the track. In general, we will be shaping the track and its mix around this kick. The kick, which is actually the second driving force of the track, is also suppressing it, you know? Let's listen to them together. As soon as the bass came in, we immediately reached around minus 6 bar levels. So what we're going to do here is to have a slight balancing among them. Maybe we'll push some of them a bit into the background. Let's say minus 10. I'm trying to get this to around minus 6 or minus 7, as much as possible. Now, for example, we've automatically made a bit of space for the bass. We're at -6, -7. Right now, the track is progressing at a very healthy level. As you can see, we've done some gain staging within itself. Now, the really critical thing is the concept of transients. A transient is basically this. Here, for example, we see the kick-in waveform. Normally, when we talk about ADSR, which stands for when it comes to electronic music and making music in a digital environment, there are 4 terms that are commonly used. These are attack, decay, sustain, and release. How fast can a sound? We can break it down into 4 parts: how quickly it enters, how high it stays at its peak, how long it lasts, and where it decays. When it comes to the first part here, the attack kicks in right away, as you can see. So if I need to show the transient like this, the sound entered within these milliseconds. It has reached its maximum level here, and from this point, as you can see, it starts to decay. This next part is the sustain, meaning how it continues and then it decays here. When we look at the other element we're trying to mix with the kick, we see a fast attack, meaning it enters right away. But for example, we see a bass frequency that decays much faster compared to the kick. The same applies to the other notes. We'll see it more clearly here. It's almost the same as the kick. They're already at the same attack. It stays at the same sound intensity up there, and then decays in the same way. When mixing, you'll always have to make a choice like this. Unfortunately, it's not possible to hear the kick and the bass at the same time. Or at least let's put it this way. It comes down to making a choice. Are we going to highlight the kick or the bass? Based on this, we plan the mix. If we're talking about dance music, the priority is always, or at least we can say mostly, because it will be in the kick. These 2 sounds, as seen in this example, enter at the same time. At the same time, the sound stays up in intensity and then they decay together. So the 2 of them, it's going to be a situation where they are constantly clashing with each other at the same time. And to make these sound good in the mix, we need to make a choice. Normally the compressor we just used can come into play here, because here I will show you one of the most commonly used tricks in dance music. I will show you the concept of sidechain. We've put the compressor on our bass channel. In our default compressor, there are 3 options. When we click on the things below, you'll see that the interfaces are changing. I will be using the one on the far left of these 3 options, a more streamlined interface. If we click on the little arrow here we will see an option like sidechain. We need to activate this sidechain. And then we will be providing an audio input here. Audio from, so which source should the sound come from? Right now there's no input, meaning there's no input at all. If I click here are the 8 channels available. We can see the names appearing. I will select the kick loop here. In a basic compressor, threshold. So there is a concept of a threshold. The threshold serves this purpose. When the sound level exceeds this threshold, the compressor engages. It also turns off when it falls below. There is a basic concept. Attack refers to how quickly the compressor will engage, while release is about how long the compressor will stay engaged. When we talk about ratio, we mean the value. Here, at a ratio of 2:1, 3:1, and 4:1, so every dB who goes above threshold, for example, when it goes above 4 dB, perceive it as 1 dB. Perceive it as 1 dB when it goes above 2 dB. So, it actually serves to indicate how hard or how soft the compressor is. Parameter, let's leave this at 3:1. What I essentially want to do here is this. Every time the kick comes in, our bass sound is being somewhat reduced, and the kick, after the sound is turned off, our bass sound is audible, We are actually creating a mapping within itself to ensure that it happens. We need to lower the threshold here, backwards from 0. And now when we play it, I'm going to bring this to the maximum level now. So, the lowest level it can go. You can easily hear the kick. Just for bass, we can hear it after the kick stops. Right now, we can barely hear the bass. This is completely about the perception. It was an example exported to Excel to ensure that what I'm aiming for here is it will ensure that the kick is in the foreground from the very beginning, and that when the kick is always played, the press is turned off when there is a kick, and the press is heard even when there is no kick. It actually helps me create an automation within itself. And again, one of the most commonly used tricks and methods to bring out the groove is this sidechain method. So, as you can see, we've already created a space for the kick and bass in the mix with just one move. Now another example from Excel. So, let's leave the sidechain on at maximum level. We can easily hear the kick. The bass is less audible. Now I'm going to click on this yellow one and disable the compressor, then I'll play it again. The bass takes the lead over the kick this time. It's back on. As you can see, the bass can't get ahead of the kick at all. This X33 is too much. Level. Let's keep it a bit balanced, like the X24s. There's a slight loss in volume here. For example, there's an output option here. For example, by adding +1 dB here, we can slightly replace the volume of the bass that we lost. We call this makeup gain. We might have slightly replaced the volume of the bass that we lost. Let's go back to our mixer section. The two sounds that were previously hitting -7, even 6, are now much more controlled. Down to D, -9. It goes up to a maximum of -8. That's already the mixing. If you've been listening to the video up to this point through your computer or phone speakers, from this moment on I kindly ask you, please listen with headphones so that we can notice these little details. I'm going to bring it a bit more forward. I'm going a bit above -8. From what I can hear right now, I'm also very pleased with the kick. I'm also very pleased with the sound of the bass. We already have a compressed kick loop. I just mentioned it, even the one that is limited. So I won't be using a compressor on top of this. The EQ, 3 here, that is the 3-channel EQ, is also being applied to our bass channel. I got it. I'm activating it like this. What I'm going to do here is again with the bass. In terms of frequencies, I want the kick's low frequencies to be more audible than the bass loop. That's why the thing in this 3-channel EQ is gain low. So the bass part is divided into 3. The part with the mid sounds, the part with the mid frequencies, and the part with the high frequencies. From here to bass loop. I will be lowering just the bass frequency by about -2 dB. This way, we'll be able to hear the kick even more clearly. Again, a little on and off. It's closed. Look, there's a slight clash. In other words, there is a conflict in their own work. When I open this up, I've started to hear the kick more clearly. I can already hear the bass quite well. He's demonstrating this in an exaggerated way as well. Let's do it. Right now, there are no bass frequencies in our bass channel. Let's go with -3. Super. One of the biggest challenges in mixing is already mixing the bass frequencies, meaning the kick, the bass, and if there is any, the sub-bass, is a challenge in itself. This part is also a basic balance. After we sit down, because the fundamental part of our track, which is called the fundamental, will actually be built upon these frequencies. Then, we will move towards the mid-frequencies, along with melodic elements, hi-hat, and percussion sounds, and towards the high frequencies. Let's activate our percussion loop right away, and first take a look at our percussion loop visually. Look, the sound is significantly less intense, meaning it has a duller structure. That naturally contains less repetition compared to the kick and bass. We're just going to increase the volume a bit for this. Already. What we're going to do is just increase the volume a bit. It has form response. It has a structure that gives... The reason I chose this loop was that we're currently progressing within a very healthy frequency range, and we haven't exceeded X9 dB in any way. We can maybe make the percussion loop a bit more audible. Great. Very good. All the elements in the front row at the same time. It's not really about making it noticeable. You can think of this like a primitive. We need to plan in a step-by-step manner from top to bottom. The percussion, already. It's the same with the loop I've chosen here. In the second layer, we're focusing on adding effects and bringing some movement to the track. Since it's an important element, it's a bit less pronounced compared to the kick and bass. There's no question of any kind of bias. The reason I'm doing this is exactly that. When we look at it, it actually goes down to a maximum of -16, -15. Hear it in the structure itself. That's really nice. Now, let's move on to the piano loop, because it's one of the main elements, being melodic. Great, for the piano loop. It's something we need to do. Let's start by putting an EQ3 here. Sorry, it's not EQ8, it's EQ3. Let's take back. Bass frequencies are already kicking. We're filled and occupied with the bass loop. So I don't want anything else to be included here. We already have our piano loop. It occupies the mid frequencies and high frequencies. So what we're going to do here is the bass frequency cut will again cause our mix to relax overall. Let's listen to it again at both minimum and maximum levels. Right now there are no bass frequencies at all. As you can already hear, there's a big difference. In fact, it's making our bass much easier to hear. It didn't work. In fact, it's making our bass easier to hear right now. So it can stay like this. Maybe we can bring it a bit more forward in the mids. By 1 dB. Great. Another thing I want to show you is the sends, which are the two options labeled A and B. When you open an Ableton project by default, it gives you two send options. And right here on the right side, we see there are letters like I, O, S, R, M, D. If you press the R key, you'll find the returns corresponding to these sends. In channel A, in A return, there is a default reverb in Ableton. In B return, as you know, there is a delay effect associated with the return. This will be useful for that. If I need to show it right away on the piano loop, the more we push this A potential forward, the sound will be directed towards the channel with reverb in this return. We call these sends and returns. These are the parameters we frequently use in the mix. Let's solo the piano loop and try to hear what it does. Let's maximize it. Look, plenty of it. It went into a reverb. Let's hear it in the piece. As you can see, we've immediately created a sense of depth. So, in mixing, we have the two basic tools I just mentioned, which are the compressor and EQ. When we use effects-based tools, one of the two main ones is reverb, which we can call an echo effect, while the other is delay, which is found in the B return. It becomes an effect. We also use these two types of effects as the most basic ones, and they are found in large quantities. But since these two are the most commonly used, Ableton has probably included these two effects in the default project. So it creates a sense of space for us, even if we are not aware of it. So when we listen to our piano loop while it's still dry, it sounds very dry and boring. With our sending to the reverb, look here already. We saw that the signal came right away. We can also listen to the reverb here. Exactly. So, what the reverb adds to our main audio signal is this. Regarding reverb, this is again Ableton's own reverb. There are many parameters involved. Since we will be examining these separately, I'm skipping over them for now. The only thing I want to show here is through sends and returns, we are adding a sense of depth and space to the piece. Let's turn off the send again. It comes directly to the forefront. And when it was a very dry, when it was a sound signal, now it's more like somehow life has come into a signaling question. Great.